All right, man, peace. So, brothers, I finally found time to cover the aftermath of the phenomenal Jermell Iron Man Charlo versus Tony Superbad Harrison rematch bout for the Super Welterweight Championship. I believe they fought for the WBC belt. And the fight pretty much went how I thought it was going to go. The only thing that I can say is that I predicted that Jermell Charlo would win the rematch by decision. He was able to get the stoppage because, once again, as I'm fond of saying, especially when I cover certain sports, sports is an analogy for life. There's so many things that we can learn if you watch certain sporting events from a three-dimensional perspective. For example, Tony Harrison truly exemplified certain things that we may have been told when we were children by our parents, like don't put the cart before the horse, don't count your chickens before they're hatched, things like that. For some reason, the brother decided that he was going to lose focus in the middle of the fight, even though he was starting to take control of the real estate of the ring in the middle rounds. And the reason why he did that is because Tony Harrison, whether it was conscious or subconscious, most likely subconscious, did not really want to win that fight again. He didn't. He was almost doing too well in the early rounds, even after the knockdown. And I give him credit because he came out in that third round after he was knocked down in the second round and started to enact whatever the game plan was that he and his corner came up with, which definitely, even though it had certain components of what I prescribed for Tony Harrison before the fight, was a bit disparate. It was a bit divergent. Because I believe that Tony Harrison should use his jab, use his footwork, have faster footwork, and more head movement. And Tony Harrison's downfall in all of his major bouts is that he is very chinny, especially when he's in the ring against upper-level competition. He's someone who loses focus, he loses concentration, and then he gets caught with something, either a right hand or a left hook, and he gets wobbly because he does not have a good chin. That's why I stated before the fight, the brother's going to have to utilize better head movement. He has almost no head movement. And for someone who decided that he was going to be the stalker in the rematch, he was going to try to walk Charlo down, he utilized zero head movement, which was very strange to me. One would think that for a fighter who allegedly was trained by Emmanuel Stewart and many of the other sages in the Kronk gym, they would have instructed him better on how to walk a fighter down, because he was not moving his head at all. His footwork was still relatively slow and pedestrian. Had to utilize sharper footwork, turn Charlo more. He may have been able to turn him into a counter left hook or a counter right hand, something like that. The fight started off relatively good for Harrison in the first round. I thought that the first round was pretty close, but I gave it to Harrison. In the second round, I thought that Harrison tried to get a little bit too aggressive. He caught Charlo in close quarters in the middle of the ring, tried to get space with a left elbow, and he was not defensively responsible. He forgot to hold the phone and got caught with a counter left hook. For those of you brothers out there who might not be familiar with that expression, hold the phone basically means to keep your right hand up by the side of your face for protection against left hooks. When you're in close quarters, you have to be very careful with those open exchanges, because dangerous fighters like a Charlo are going to be looking to throw blind left hooks, especially when they're getting hit with punches like Charlo was. He got hit with a couple of right hands, I believe, a couple of straight right hands from Harrison, and he threw a semi-blind left hook that caught Harrison, and he was able to catch him with another punch and knock him down. So that's how that happened. It was a bit of a flash knockdown, but still, it still counts as a 2-point round. And cats out there, I'm sure, are saying the judges were going to job Harrison anyway. Well, that was to be expected, I said before the fight. Going into the rematch, Harrison was still going to be considered the B side. Charlo was going to be considered the A side. So all of those factors should have been some of the components or some of the elements that were placed into the game plan. I don't know if Harrison's corner were doing an appropriate job of warning him in between rounds to stop fooling around, stop playing around, but he did not stop. And it led to his demise later in the fight. But let's just get back to around the second round, right after the knockdown. I thought that the best head movement that I saw from Harrison the entire fight was near the end of the second round. And in the third round, when Charlo tried to finish him off along the ropes, he ducked, he weaved, he did a pretty good job. And then started to walk him down, and was pretty much approaching him in a straight line. he had Charlo flummoxed from rounds 3 to rounds 9 or 10. But what I did notice, somewhere around rounds 8 to the rest of the fight, or to the remainder of the fight, Harrison stopped finishing his combinations. And that was one of the keys that I had for Harrison's victory in my preview video. He has the dominant jab. He had it in the first fight, definitely had it in the second fight as well. That long, quick snapping jab, it was bothering Charlo, it was hurting him. But what Harrison was doing in the second fight, while he was walking him down, was he was finishing with a hard left hook to the body. And that was starting to wear Charlo down, and he stopped going to that hard left hook to the body somewhere around round 7 or 8. And I thought that kind of helped Charlo recuperate a little bit later on in the fight. He got a little bit more gusto around round 10. I believe that his corner warned him that he's going to have to pick it up in round 10. He came out in round 10 and started to back Harrison up a little bit. And Harrison fell away from his game plan. He stopped finishing his combinations with that left hook to the body. He stopped moving his head. And he stopped throwing as many punches. And eventually he was going to get caught because, once again, Tony Harrison is not a championship level fighter. It doesn't mean that he'll never win a belt. He's already won one. But he's a fighter that, when he gets into those big moments, he's going to find a way to lose. There are certain people like that in life. It's like a guy or a female who happens to get lucky and find a significant other that is wife material or lifelong material, husband material, whatever you want to call it. And they blow it because in their subconscious mind, they can't deal with the pressure of making the relationship last. You also see that in boxing. You have certain fighters that get to pivotal moments and they fuck it up for whatever reason. Subconsciously, they might expose their chin. In the case of Harrison, he started breakdancing in the middle of the ring for whatever reason. I have no idea why. Because he was not the A side. When you're the A side, you can do those type of things because the judges are going to give you a lot of the 50-50 rounds. As the B side fighter, they're looking for reasons to not give you close rounds, especially when you won the first fight already as the B side fighter. Because at worst, they want a trilogy. At best, they're hoping that the A side fighter who lost the first fight can stop you in the second fight and they can move on with whatever plans they have for that A side fighter, which is exactly what happened. As we can see here in the still shot, Harrison, when he was focused and had his chin down and was relatively defensively responsible, was able to finish his combos with hard, straight right hands, and especially that left hook to the body. It was wonderful. It was great work that he was doing in the middle rounds, even though I was noticing still no head movement, no really crisp foot movement. He was not cutting off the ring properly. I think he could have stopped Charlo had he had better head movement and cut off the ring. Now, by the 11th round, as we can see, this was on the second knockdown. Charlo hit him with a left hook that literally snapped his whole head around. I thought it was a good stoppage. They easily could have stopped it on the second knockdown. And you know what was so interesting? As I was watching the fight, I watched it 2 or 3 times. On the second knockdown, Jack Reese, the referee, allowed Harrison to continue. Gave him a nice long pronounced count. The same count that he gave Tyson Fury when Tyson Fury fought against Deontay Wilder last December. And all the wokey-wokes and the pro-blackities claimed that Jack Reese was trying to make sure that Tyson Fury lasted the whole fight. No, that's why he said in the spirit of the sport. In the spirit of the sport, you give a great contender who's winning the fight or a great champion who's highly competitive and has the belt and is fighting for his life, you give him the chance to get knocked the fuck out. You just don't stop the fight or give a quick count or wave the fight off for any reason. So I noticed that with Jack Reese, and I just wanted to mention that because so many people were trying to allege that there was some chicanery afoot with Jack Reese and the way in which he counted Tyson Fury and quote-unquote gave Tyson Fury a chance to get up, not really understanding what the hell that they were talking about. But just getting back to Tony Harrison, it was very unfortunate, very sad. But I said that before. You know, and the fight kind of sort of reminded me of a fight from, I would say, almost 20 years ago. I think it was back in 2001, maybe 2000 or 2001, when Felix Trinidad fought Fernando Vargas for the 154-pound title. Fernando Vargas fought in the same 96 Olympics as Floyd Mayweather, and I believe that he became the youngest fighter to ever win the 154-pound title. He might still hold that record today, I don't know. And Felix Trinidad was moving up through the weight classes. He pretty much just dominated his way through the welterweight division. He won a relatively controversial fight against Oscar De La Hoya, and now he was trying to take over the 154-pound weight class. He got into the ring with Fernando Vargas, who was very precocious, and he was able to get a couple of knockdowns early in the fight. Fernando was able to come back in the middle rounds, but eventually Felix Trinidad was able to stop Fernando Vargas. I want to say somewhere around the 9th or 10th round, maybe the 11th round as well. But this fight kind of sort of reminded me of that in the way in which the fight went, because there were portions of the middle rounds of the fight between Vargas and Trinidad where Vargas was spectacularly outboxing Trinidad. It was truly wonderful to behold. Great craft. I believe he was trained by the Garcias, by Mikey Garcia's father. But his craft was very high level, especially for a young fighter like that. He did very well in the middle rounds, but of course, in the latter part of the fight, Trinidad's power was just too much. And we all know some of the reasons for that. Not just natural, but some augmentations were made to them gloves. But that's neither here nor there, allegedly. Everything I'm saying about that is alleged, by the way. But what's next for Mr. Jermell Charlo? I see a unification bout, hopefully, between himself and J-Rock Williams from Philly. What's next for Tony Harrison? I could see him just hanging around the 154-pound weight class, waiting for some of these fighters to move up to 160 pounds, and then maybe getting another belt, maybe even 2 belts at 154. He's that type of fighter. He'll get a belt if he gets to fight for a vacant title, maybe defend it once, maybe sneak into somebody else's backyard and take their belt, because he has good enough craft and good enough skills to do that. But he's never going to be a fighter that holds the belt for 7, 8, 9 fights. He has the grit and the heart to do it. He just doesn't have the focus. I believe that he's more interested in in being a neighborhood celebrity and assisting the children in learning how to box than he is in being a long-standing and a long-lasting champion. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong about that. But anyway, once again, wonderful fight. We also got to see Errol Spence's first reappearance after the car crash. I'll be doing a video about that shortly. Congratulations to Jermell Charlo. He fought hard. I don't think that his craft was as good or as pronounced or advanced as Harrison's, but he was able to get away with it. He has to watch himself, though, because Charlo has some flaws that will be capitalized upon by better fighters who don't have the flaws of a Harrison. Charlo, for whatever reason, I'm not sure if it's just something that has to do with his body mechanics, his head is always tilted to the left. He has to do something about that, because a good fighter is going to sucker him for a left hook and he's going to get dropped, maybe even stopped. But even when he's not boxing, his head is always cocked to the left for whatever reason. So someone's going to have to tell him about that and hopefully assist him. He's very well schooled, but that anger that he fights with, that dark force energy that he tries to fight with, can be used against him. And Harrison was trying to use it against him in the rematch. It's just that he went too far with the showboating, and it was silly. And he got so caught up in the showboating, Harrison did, that he himself started to get away from his game plan. He stopped finishing his combinations with the left hook. And once again, had he used better footwork and more head movement, he would have at the very least brought the fight to a decision, and he would have made the judges look extremely bad had they given that fight to Charlo. The fight was already on the way to looking like Harrison was going to get heisted, but I don't feel sorry for him because he lost focus in the fight. You have to be laser focused in a fight like that, especially when you understand how you're perceived as opposed to how your counterpart, how your opponent is perceived. That being, he still is considered the A side. Charlo was considered the A side in that fight. But anyway, peace.